In the shadowed corners of the wilderness, where the cold gnaws at your skin and the wind whispers dark secrets, an ancient presence stirs. For centuries, the legends of the Wendigo have haunted the forests of North America, passed down through whispered tales around flickering fires. The Wendigo is more than just a myth, it's a warning, a terrifying reminder of what happens when desperation overtakes morality. And if you listen closely, the silence of the frozen woods isn't as empty as it seems. The Wendigo legend originates from the Algonquian-speaking tribes, who believed that a powerful, malevolent spirit could possess those who gave in to the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. As hunger and desperation grew during harsh winters, some resorted to the unspeakable, and in doing so, transformed into something monstrous. The Wendigo's hunger is eternal, its greed insatiable. Even after consuming its victims, it remains ravenous, a cursed soul trapped in an endless cycle of consumption and death. The Wendigo's appearance is the stuff of nightmares, towering and emaciated, its skin stretched impossibly tight over its bones. Its lips are perpetually frozen in a gruesome sneer, revealing sharp teeth, while its hollow eyes glow with an otherworldly light. Many say its body is covered in frost and ice, as if the creature itself is the embodiment of winter's cruelty. The Wendigo's presence brings more than just death, it brings fear that chills you to your core, as if the very air around it freezes in terror. For those unlucky enough to encounter the Wendigo, escape is rarely an option. The Wendigo is said to be swift, despite its gaunt frame, and its hunger drives it to relentless pursuit. Legends tell of eerie screams in the dead of night, echoes of the creature hunting its prey. Survivors speak of eyes watching from the darkness, a sense of dread that clings to the air long before the creature is seen. Its victims are rarely found, but when they are, their bodies are often mutilated beyond recognition, consumed by the Wendigo's ravenous hunger. As the legends continue, many wonder if the Wendigo still walks among us. Some say the creature is merely a myth, a cautionary tale to ward off greed and selfishness. But others whisper of sightings in the far reaches of the Canadian wilderness, where isolated townsfolk speak of missing people, eerie howls, and an unnatural chill in the air. Could it be that the Wendigo is still out there, waiting for its next victim, lurking just beyond the edge of the firelight? Only those brave enough to venture into the frozen wilds might find out. But they may never return. Do you believe? Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join us for the next episode, where we delve into terrifying Wendigo encounters and sightings that may just prove the legend is real. Not all who encounter the Wendigo live to tell the tale, but those who do speak of horrors that defy explanation. In the icy grip of the wilderness, where isolation amplifies every shadow and whisper, these survivors were forced to face the creature that should not exist. They recount the moments when they felt the Wendigo's presence, an otherworldly cold creeping in, the unsettling silence shattered by unnatural sounds, and the overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to drain the very warmth from their bones. One such tale comes from a trapper in the Canadian wilderness, a hardened man who had spent decades surviving the unforgiving terrain. He never feared the wild until that fateful night. As the winds howled and snow blanketed his cabin, he awoke to the sound of scratching, like claws raking against wood. At first, he thought it was an animal, but as the sound intensified, a voice, soft, eerie, and distinctly human, began to call his name. Terrified, he glanced outside and saw nothing but darkness, and glowing eyes staring back at him from the trees. Then there's the story of a group of hikers who ventured deep into the northern forests, unaware of the legend that haunted the area. As they set up camp, strange occurrences began. Footsteps crunching in the snow just beyond their sight, whispers in the wind that grew louder as night fell. One by one, they experienced the sensation of being watched, as if the trees themselves had eyes. When one of them vanished without a trace, leaving only scattered tracks in the snow, the remaining hikers were left with no doubt, they weren't alone. Some describe the Wendigo not as a sudden, violent attack but as a slow, insidious presence that creeps into the mind. A hunter from the Midwest recounts how, after days of tracking elk in a remote region, he began to feel an unnatural hunger gnawing at him, a hunger that no food could satisfy. His thoughts darkened, and a voice inside his head urged him to do the unthinkable. Desperate and alone, he realized too late that he was becoming what he had feared most, another victim of the Wendigo's curse. Perhaps the most chilling of all is the story of a search and rescue team that went looking for a missing person deep in the wilderness. What they found instead was something they couldn't explain. As they pushed further into the forest, the temperature plummeted, and an eerie silence fell. They found no trace of the missing person, But they discovered a small clearing, the snow disturbed and blood splattered across the ground. The footprints that led away weren't human, and as they looked up, they felt it, the eyes of the Wendigo upon them. Could these stories be proof of something darker lurking in the forests? Do you believe? Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join us for more terrifying encounters in the next episode. The legend of the Wendigo is rooted in the harsh, unforgiving winters of the North American wilderness. Originating in Algonquian folklore, the Wendigo was more than just a cautionary tale, it was a manifestation of something far more terrifying. In times of famine, when food was scarce, and survival hung by a thread, those who succumbed to the temptation of cannibalism were said to be transformed into Wendigos. A creature born from hunger, the Wendigo embodied the insatiable greed and endless thirst for flesh, haunting those desperate enough to break the ultimate taboo. As the stories spread across tribes, the Wendigo became a symbol of not only cannibalism but also unchecked greed. The creature was described as gaunt, skeletal, and eternally starving, a reflection of its cursed existence. Legend spoke of its horrific appearance, flesh clinging to bones, eyes sunken deep in its skull, and lips tattered from its own gnawing hunger. It roamed the forests, stalking those who ventured too far into the cold wilderness, feeding on their fear before devouring their bodies. Its presence was a dark reminder of what could happen when human nature is pushed to its limits. The transformation into a Wendigo was said to be both physical and spiritual. Once a person gave in to cannibalism, their body began to change, bones stretched, skin pulled tight over their skeletal form, and an unbearable cold settled in their soul. But it wasn't just hunger that drove the transformation, it was a spiritual corruption, a darkness that consumed their mind and body. The person became something no longer human, cursed to wander the frozen wilderness, eternally starving yet never satisfied. Over time, the Wendigo legend evolved, taking on new meanings. Some began to see the Wendigo not just as a cannibalistic monster but as a symbol of greed and consumption. In modern interpretations, the Wendigo's insatiable hunger became a metaphor for unchecked desires, greed for wealth, power, and resources. This shift in the myth speaks to the timeless nature of the Wendigo's warning, that unchecked greed and selfishness will consume a person from the inside out, turning them into a hollow, monstrous shell of their former self. Even today, the Wendigo continues to captivate our imaginations. Its image has been featured in movies, television shows, and even video games. But what is it about this ancient myth that still resonates with us? Perhaps it's the fear of losing control, of being consumed by our darkest instincts. Or maybe it's the eerie reminder that beneath the thin veneer of civilization, something monstrous still lurks, waiting for its chance to emerge. In the cold, dark wilderness, the Wendigo's hunger never dies. Is the Wendigo just a myth, or does its hunger still roam the forests? Do you believe? Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for the next chilling chapter of the Wendigo legend. The wind howls through the endless expanse of snow-covered wilderness. The trees creak in the bitter cold, but something else moves among them, something unnatural, something hungry. The Wendigo, a creature born of starvation and desperation, has been sighted more times than you'd think. And the stories, each more terrifying than the last, linger in the minds of those who have encountered it. For centuries, people have claimed to see the Wendigo lurking in the shadows of the darkest forests. The chilling stories of these encounters are passed down from generation to generation, warnings of the insatiable hunger that stalks the wilderness. From hunters to hikers, those who have come too close to this horrifying creature share tales that seem too real to be mere folklore. Today, we unravel the most spine-chilling Wendigo sightings, each one leaving us questioning, could the legend truly be alive? In 1879, a case that would haunt the Canadian wilderness forever unfolded. A Cree hunter named Swift Runner, once known as a trusted trapper, returned from the frozen woods after a brutal winter. But his family was missing, and when authorities investigated, they found something far worse than starvation. Swift Runner had turned cannibal, devouring his own kin. He claimed he had been possessed by a Wendigo, its insidious hunger driving him to madness. Was it a desperate man's excuse, or did the spirit of the Wendigo truly take hold of him? Another case from the early 1900s tells of Jack Fiddler, a Cree chief and a notorious Wendigo hunter. Fiddler claimed he had killed 14 Wendigos during his lifetime, protecting his people from their cursed hunger. But Fiddler's fate was grim. He was arrested after killing a woman he believed had transformed into a Wendigo. The Wendigo spirit, he argued, was real and dangerous, infecting the weak. His story is a grim reminder that, for many, the Wendigo was not just a legend but a living terror to be hunted down and destroyed. In the quiet town of Kenora, Ontario, strange reports began surfacing in the early 1900s. Residents claimed to see a tall, skeletal figure with glowing eyes stalking the outskirts of the town. The creature moved silently through the trees, sometimes appearing in broad daylight. Local hunters feared it was a Wendigo, while others chalked it up to hysteria. But even in modern times, sightings around Kenora persist, with many claiming the Wendigo still haunts the dense woods that surround the town. Even in recent years, stories of Wendigo encounters continue to emerge. Hikers in the dense forests of northern Minnesota have reported hearing strange growls, feeling watched, and seeing ghostly figures in the distance. One group of campers claimed to have seen a gaunt figure with sunken eyes and unnaturally long limbs staring at them from across the fire, only to vanish the moment they blinked. Some believe it was a prank. Others aren't so sure. The Wendigo, it seems, refuses to fade from our nightmares. What makes these sightings truly terrifying is the pattern they seem to follow. The Wendigo often appears in the most desolate, isolated places, where the cold bites and survival becomes uncertain. The stories seem to transcend generations, almost as if the Wendigo is waiting for a time when it can strike again. Could these encounters be a manifestation of our deepest fears, or is there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? The Wendigo may be a creature of legend, but the stories, the sightings, the encounters, make it feel all too real. Every dark forest, every cold wind that howls through the trees, brings with it the possibility that something ancient and ravenous is watching. The question is, will it be watching you? Do you believe? Like, subscribe, and join us next time for another chilling chapter of the Wendigo legend.